Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. As I told you, it was an honor to welcome our keynote speaker. Now it's time for us to hear from him. And I must say, I am beyond honored to be the one to introduce our keynote speaker for the day. And so, Mr. Bernard Avle is our keynote speaker for today. Mr. Bernard Avle is a broadcast journalist and director of news programming at City FM, one of Ghana's most influential radio stations. He also hosts City FM's morning show, the City Breakfast Show, and the Point of View show on City TV. Additionally, he is a founding director of iJournal Africa, where he trains and creates opportunities for participants to practice citizen journalism. Please join me in welcoming my personal favorite and TV crush, Mr. Bernard Avle.
Thank you. I didn't get the MC's name. Please, what's your name? Linda. Put your hands together for Linda. You know, when we're in Legon, if we see Linda, we'll say Coco, Coco. Wow, it's such a joy to be here. Thank you, Gifty. Thank you, Richard and friends from Emerging Public Leaders. I see my senior in journalism and all of you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry for coming late. I missed the best parts of the program. Somehow I know God wanted me to be here because 16th July was already occupied in my calendar a month ago. I was supposed to moderate a World Bank event, launching a report, and then be at a different event at Ministry of Finance. But somehow Juliet, maybe she prayed. So for some reason, when she gave me her invite, so it sort of kicked me out of the second program. So it was very clear I was supposed to be here. And so because of that, I said I wouldn't write a speech. I usually like to come to a place to feel the place and then say what I want to say. But I came late, so it's going to be tough. So I'm going to use material from what happened yesterday and today to talk to you briefly. So the question I asked myself is, if I were sat here, what would I want to be said? Right. So I just came from a World Bank event where they launched something they call the Country Policy and Institutional Assessment. This was for over 40 African countries, and I was the MC and the moderator. They looked at 4 key areas: economic management, structural policies, social inclusion and equity, and then the 4th one was what they call public sector management and institutions. And then they compared all the African countries, sub-Saharan Africa, between 2015, when the first report was done, to 2023, when this new report covers. Interestingly enough, we had progressed collectively in economic management in that 8-year period. We had done relatively well in structural policies. Social inclusion and equity, we had done very well. But the area that collectively we had retrogressed was public sector management and institutions. So I know I have to be here. The 5 areas of public sector that were assessed, and this report was launched today, an hour ago, so this is fresh from the bakery. The 5 areas were quality of budgetary and financial management. We had a big red, very poor. Property rights and rules-based governance, a big red. Efficiency of revenue mobilization, it was okay. Quality of public administration, not too bad. And then the last one, transparency, accountability, and corruption in the public sector, a big red. So of the 5, 3 we had retrogressed in 8 years. And I said, wow, maybe these young people need to hear this. That even though we are doing well in other sectors, what the panel concluded today was that this factor, public sector management, had an impact on the other 3. So if you want private sector to do well, if you want better economic management, if you want to bridge the gender gaps, you need quality public sector management. So in a sense, Juliet, emerging public leaders is the right thing to do at the right time. And I want us to put our hands together for the team. But what does this mean for us, and what response does it require of us? I'm going to give you 5 words which I think empathize the kind of things we need to think about. So when I did my MBA, I went to study strategy, and one of the things they kept pushing at us was what they call Porter's 5 forces. I never understood it, but I learned it and I passed the exam. So I'm going to give you my 5 forces to be an effective public sector leader. 5 forces. For those of you who do MBAs, I don't remember what the 5 forces are, but a smart guy called Michael Porter came up with 5 forces, and we've kept it at 5. So I'm going to give you 5, 5 forces. And by the way, all the forces start with Michael Porter's surname, so you can remember. So what's the first force? I think whether you're private sector or public sector, one of the most important things we need to grapple with is the question of purpose. The question of purpose. I'm here because of purpose. As in, I knew very early that I had to be a journalist. Because when I was young, I wanted to be seen as smart. I wanted to be an economist. Funny enough, my aim was to be the chief economist of the World Bank. And I just finished interviewing the chief economist for Africa for the World Bank, who incidentally, after his presentation, introduced me. So I've come full circle from wanting to be the chief economist to now being introduced by the chief economist to do my work. So I found purpose in media. So the point I'm making is you have to find purpose, not a career. Most people go to school because they want a career. But if what you want is for yourself, you have a career. If what you want is beyond yourself, you found purpose. So purpose is living beyond yourself. I think purpose is the defining leadership quality. What differentiates leaders who make change from those who just come and waste our time is the lack of understanding of true purpose. True leaders understand that they are here for a reason bigger than themselves. And so John Maxwell says, if you are greater than your purpose, you don't have a calling, you have a career. But if your purpose is greater than you have a calling. All great leaders have a big why that's bigger than themselves. So this is not about getting a nice job at the World Bank or the IMF or the Ministry of Finance. This is not about putting your face on the 40 Best Ghanaian Leaders Awards scheme or getting a higher salary or a stepping stone just to get popular to run for office. That may be part of this. But emerging public leaders has to trigger in you a desire to do more for the world than for yourself. If you're going to make an impact, this has to be more than you. So people say it's all about you. That's not true. It's not all about you. It's never all about you. If our parents educated just themselves, we wouldn't be standing here. So we have to know that we've been put in this incubator to do more for the society than for ourselves. So we must grapple with the question of purpose and understand why we are here. The purpose for your education, for this training and this cohort is to influence the next generation. Which leads me to my next P. I call it process. We are in a microwave generation where we believe that once you get the certificate, you are qualified to do the job. The certificate is just enough to get you into the door. It's the process. Leadership is not built in a microwave oven. It's in a big kinky pot. You must allow the heat to work on the ball for it to marinate, to emerge. So you need to deal with the question of process. That's my second P. So having understood purpose, you must understand that you are going through a process. We are very event focused. This is a great event. I love this event. But events are just good for decision. It is process that brings development. And it's not an either or. So you need an event to decide that you want to do something. But that thing you will do, you can't do it in a day. So he says, we underestimate what we can do in a year, and we overestimate what we can do in a day. Leadership doesn't develop in a day, but it develops daily. So you need to understand that every day is a chance to grow. So having understood purpose, you must understand that you are now in a process. You are the product. Now, the purpose of coming here is not to give you a certificate. It's to make you something. So we are putting you in a kiln to apply heat to you. So when you get into the public sector, the public sphere, you can be that agent of change. So you must understand that it's a process. And that process involves pain and sacrifice and daily learning and commitment and coordination and working with others. We are too quick to make people heroes. I always say to people, I have too many plaques in my house for a 43-year-old. Every event I go to, they want to give me an award because they think once you are prominent, it means you deserve an award. It's not about popularity. I must use my prominence to influence society positively. So we are an awards-fixated society, just giving people awards because people like them. But we are not awarding people for any tangible thing they do. We must understand that it takes time to build a nation. It takes time to build a family. It takes time to build a business. It takes time to build an institution. I've been working in this job for 20 years. If I add the 3.5 years I was a student broadcaster, which means 23 of my 43 years have been spent at the altar of media. So it's not just purpose. I've also understood process. So you applauded when I came. It's because you've seen the finished product. You didn't know where I started from. I used to cover programs like this, and sometimes they don't give us money. We walk back home. But it was part of the process. So an emerging leader must embrace the issue of process and that you are the product, which takes me to my third P, the issue of time. But I use period, so you understand that the commonest question I get asked when I enter a room, apart from how are you, what's your name, is what time is it? Because I wear a nice watch, which by the way was a gift. Now, you must have the answer to that question. You must understand what time it is. I argue that most of our leaders don't know what time it is, and I'll give you a few examples. This morning on radio, we discussed the contemplation of what I consider a very obnoxious legislative instrument to allow members of parliament, ministers, and justices of the Supreme Court to put sirens on their vehicles and to essentially drive without speed limits. That's essentially what this LI is saying. Now, why would they put out such an LI? It's because they don't know what time it is. They don't understand that the mood of the nation and the challenges we face, this is not the time to be giving yourself creature comforts. This is the time to build institutions and unclog our traffic situation. I think that law is a disaster because a disaster is the wrong thing at the wrong time. That's what you call a disaster. Another example of leaders who don't understand time is when they try to apply a law to tax mobile money. I thought probably that was the right thing at the wrong time. So that was a mistake. Eventually, you bring people into the pool and then you tax it. A country that has 16 million adult voters and less than 4 million bank accounts does not tax mobile money at its infant stage. Because if you talk of financial inclusion, you bring them in and then you can tax them later. So the e-levy was a lack of understanding of the time. You were taxing the baby when it hadn't developed any teeth. So it was bound to fail. So to be an effective leader, you must understand what time it is, not just within the context of applying a policy like the LI or the e-levy, or even privatizing and selling parts of a hotel chain to a company owned by a politician, which is probably the right thing at the wrong time to the wrong person. But again, it's a question of lack of understanding of the time. So it had to take strike action, threat by organized labor for the government to back down. But in the issue of time, there are some things you do which is the right thing at the right time. Like growing leaders, like bringing them into an incubator like this to help them to know each other and to understand the process of becoming an effective leader. So I argue that emerging public leaders is the right thing at the right time. Because this is the kind of thing we need at this time. All right, yeah, you can applaud. What we need to know about time is that beyond the question of doing the right thing at the right time, we must also understand what time it is for the continent. This is the time for emergence. This is the time where young people are taking over. Because it's the time where we can leapfrog. But it means that somebody has to pay the price and have the humility to understand that not everything I do today will benefit today. Because for a generation to be free, the generation before it must understand that they have to pay the price for the next generation. So instant gratification would not work. So it's time for sacrifice. To say that my father, when he was in the university in a Cohort hall in the 60s and the 70s, he was 2 in a room. He used to eat breakfast served by butlers in the Cohort hall dining hall. 35 years later, when I went to Legon Hall, we were 8 in the room, 4 people with 1 pecha each, and the dining hall was for studies because we were eating at Commonwealth Hall without covering. So that generation, with all that they had, failed my generation. So I need to understand that having been educated as one of 8 children, my kids must not go into that same rubbish. That's my job. It's not to say that in the good old days things were better, and when we were in school we used to be served by butlers as if it was a pride. The real measure of my success is what world I live for my kids. So imagine public leaders. Your job is not to bask in the privilege of the now, but to create a better future for the next generation. Are you getting what I'm saying? So we must understand the issue of time. So it's time for sacrifice. That's what I'm trying to say. I'll go to my next P. So I've spoken about the purpose, something bigger than you. Then you must understand that leadership is a process. Then you need to understand the issue of time. Then within that discussion of process and period is also what I call precision. Precision. I interviewed a lady who was training artisans in what she calls precision engineering, because we are a community which allows too much ambiguity, where, as KSM will say, programs start at 3:34. That has to change. To dominate in the world, we must be precise, not just in our ideas and our policies, but even in simple, mundane things like what time the bus will come, what time a program will start, how long must you speak for. Precision is key, even in the military method. So if you read Psalm 2, he says, in respect of the military method, we have 5 core ingredients: measurement, estimation of quantity, calculation, balancing of chances, and victory. I'll repeat that for those of you who like to write. He says, in respect of the military method, and this is in his application of military method for strategy. We're talking 5 forces here. He says there is measurement, there is estimation of quantity, there's calculation, there's balancing of chances, and there's victory. He says, for any endeavor, victory depends on how well you balance your chances. But you can't balance your chances if you can't calculate. And if you can't calculate if you cannot estimate quantity. And you cannot estimate quantity if you cannot measure. So measurement is at the core of victory in any endeavor. If we want to succeed, we must be precise what we want as a society. We must understand precision in communication, precision in tailoring. So you don't sew a dress and the button is crooked. Or you do a net door and I have to put tissue paper at the edge so that mosquitoes don't enter. That lack of precision is the bane of our society. So it says, a society that tolerates shallowness or mediocrity in philosophy because it's a higher profession, but despises excellence in plumbing because it's a low profession, will have the same problem. Neither its theories nor its pipes will hold water. What am I trying to say? We must raise our level of performance to excellence based on precision. We must be a society that understands that things must be done right. Whether it's even giving a speech, you must spend time to give it with the right keys, because this may be the only chance you get to speak to somebody before they check out of the country. So we must build precision into what we do. But I present my final P, which is the most important, because yesterday I interviewed the CEO of an organization called Human Capital Africa. She's Dr. Obagiali Ezekwesili. She's in Ghana to talk about the reason why we need to develop human capital. And her argument is that for too long in Africa, we've spent time focused on outputs, school buildings, instead of outcomes. How are kids learning? We've spent time on the quantitative, This number of people have had A's instead of the qualitative. What have they learned? Her argument is to save the continent, we must go back to the basics and we must transition from being education focused to learning outcomes focused. She said it only yesterday in an interview I'm yet to air. Her explanation for that is that foundations are critical for buildings to last. And her argument to the AU this afternoon as I speak, she's engaging them, is that we must focus on just moving from access to learning outcomes. We must prepare not just the body and the mind, but also the soul. That was the argument she makes, and I agree with her. Her point is that for Africa to be free, we must train a new generation of leaders who know how to read and write, but also understand why they are here, and have the confidence to know that they have a place in the world. She's a woman who's been minister of both solid minerals and minister for education. She says to me in the interview, most people think Africa's resources are under the earth, and so they spend a lot of money exploiting it when they forget that Africa's resources are the kids they send to school and miseducate. The only chance we have is to pour our best into our human beings. And I agree with her argument today that we need people to emerge. But the image of emergence means that for a long time we have not seen you. Because for something to emerge, it means it's been submerged. That means that for a long time, the potential of the people has been covered by water. But for those who understand timing and leapfrogging, you must know that this is our time to rise. You spend your time being submerged to build the foundations to be resilient. Don't complain that nobody's writing your story, nobody's interviewing you or giving you a chance to speak on air. The days of submergence are days of wisdom, because there are days where you can make mistakes and nobody will punish you. There were many years on air, nobody listened to me, but a lot of mistakes I made were not punished because I was submerged. But when my time came, I had spent many years making enough mistakes to know that I have a chance at the king's table. So I came to encourage you that in the period of submergence, don't complain or go on Facebook and rush to get clicks and likes. That is not sustainable. Spend time developing the inner core values. Discover honesty, integrity. Develop it as well. Learn hardship. Know how to go without food and money, because when you get to that position, you will be tempted. We criticize politicians because they take bribes. A lot of them have not gone through the incubator of being submerged, and they emerge too quickly. But I'm sure the Emerging Public Leaders Program has taught you a thing or two about the value of being submerged. We want to produce inside-out leaders, not outside-in leaders. We want to produce leaders who are bigger on the inside than those who are bigger on the outside, who have built accountability structures into their lives, who can look at a bribe in the face and say, to hell with you and your money. If Africa will stand a chance, I came to tell you that it starts with you. The final P is the P of people. People must recognize their potential and work hard to make a difference on their continent. They must see wisdom in the times they are in. Spend time learning how to be precise. But most of all, they must live for purpose. I came to encourage you to stand up for the truth and be a leader who the world will be proud of. And so as you graduate on this fine Tuesday, I wish you well. May God bless you and God give you wisdom so you can become the emerging public leader that we all pray for. Thank you very much, Juliet. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for Mr. Bernard Avle. Let's do it again. Let's do it again for him as he takes his seat.